In his State of the State address, Governor John Hickenlooper unveiled his Colorado Blueprint 2.0 program, which focuses development to counties still facing high unemployment. The governor also made hiring a chief marketing officer for the state a high priority, but failed to offer detailed policy perspectives on other high-profile issues in his 43-minute speech. Now, David, we don't usually expect, full policy breakdowns in a State of the State. It's meant there to kind of just set the table and go for it. But it was pretty light as State of the State addresses go. What was your impression?
Well, a bolder thing would have been to undo the error he made by putting Colorado into the Obamacare Medicaid expansion, which is going to be, you talk about busting the budget. That's a nuclear bomb lobbed into our state budget over the long term. He did have a good idea, which is something back more on the core of what the state government should be helping with. Now there's some extra money to hire more social workers to help with child protection. That's a proper approach, is to focus on doing the things you're already doing better, especially when you're not doing them very well currently, rather than big new things. On this whole state marketing thing, this does remind me of Governor Romer when we were in a recession. He had this thing called "Always Buy Colorado." It's more patriotic to buy something made in Colorado than by those disgusting people in Nebraska or Kansas, apparently. And of course, that had very little effect on the economy. And I don't think a chief marketing officer is going to be that big a deal. And in fact, the record on this is weak, because the last time we tried something like that, we had got the new state logo, which was a triangle, which is crazy because Colorado is in the shape of a rectangle. So I'm sure everyone ended up being extremely confused.
Especially with any fears about carbon monoxide. Ed, you had a great article about this. You were there for the speech. You've been there for former ones. What was your impression? What was the impression of people that you were around?
I think the impression of people that viewed this, and it came from both sides, but I think Bill Cabot really said it the best, the Republican Senate president. He said this speech was clearly delivered to a split legislature. Hickenlooper has made some really bold State of the State addresses before. In 2012, at the same time he was calling for civil unions to be legalized, the year before it was, he called for a plan to end homelessness in Colorado. Now, he has gone over the top in his goals sometimes, but this is the least goal-oriented of his speeches, and it seemed to have the idea that I'm not going to dictate anything to a chamber where Republicans control the Senate, Democrats control the House, and if you push something too stringent, too partisan through, it's just going to die one way or the other. It seemed that he was really saying, hey, here are some topics I'd like to hit, and could you all work with me on it? It was very notable that we're expecting a big report from his oil and gas task force about mid-session. And Governor Hickenlooper's advice was, hey, we really need to balance the state's energy and environment, which he has said over and over again. There was no direction there. On Tabor, it was, hey, guys, we're in a bind. And he didn't even address issues like construction defects reform that's expected to be one of the biggest issues of this session. And so I'm not saying it was insubstantive, but it really reflected, I think, an uncertainty of what he will be able to do with this newly constituted legislature. And I think when you're talking about adding bike trails and hiking trails, or putting forth plans to help the long-term unemployed find jobs, those are things that you can find bipartisan agreement on. I think it will be very interesting to see where the rest of this session, and frankly next year, goes as well. And he understands that and is playing this quite close to the vest and quite carefully in the way he asks people for his help.
Gloria, what were your impressions of the first State of the State address of Governor Hickenlooper's second term?
You know what? We live in a world, especially in a political world, where you live and die by the specifics. So be specific at your own peril. And I think that's exactly what he was speaking to, or at least using his words, parsing them, just being as general as he could be, talking about things that have either come up in, of course, the rah-rah speech and the we are doing this and we would like to do this and this is what I'm willing to do to work with this split legislature. But I think it is important. I mean, if you look at what President Obama has gone through for being specific, you think about it, it's like, learn some lessons here, because you don't know what's going to happen in the world. We don't know what's going to happen here in Colorado, whether it is going to be dealing with Tabor or the next mass shooting, God forbid, or just whatever it will be. You can't dictate how your days, weeks, and months are going to break down as the governor. And so being specific can really gum you up, especially when you have those who want the office where you sit.
Mm-hmm. Patty, you've seen a lot of these. What did you think of the proposals? And specifically, I love your viewpoints on the chief marketing officer for Colorado.
Funny, that's what I want to talk about. But first, I will say, I thought his first speech, his inaugural speech, that was very personal and talked about the fires and the floods and everything that he'd come through and how he changed, was a very good speech. I think it now sounds like he hopes the 10,000 random acts of kindness he proposed in that speech are all going to be done at the legislature towards his proposals, because that might be the only way they actually get things done. The marketing officer idea, we do have the triangle, and not just one triangle, it's the double triangle.
That's
so
true.
that you first have the green danger sign, you know, the hazard sign that's out there, and now every department is supposed to have a matching sign. So I see these press releases all the time, and it kind of reminds me of Girl Scout cookies. It's kind of that level of marketing. And everyone likes Girl Scout cookies, so maybe it will work to make people like Colorado more. The chief marketing officer has several things to do. One is, like it or not, Colorado has legal recreational marijuana. If you go on the tourism site, the official state tourism site, they don't address it. It's not there. The word marijuana is not there. They actually send you to the city of Denver, that hotbed of pot, which does actually have some rules and some advice on what to do with marijuana. But this is something the marketing officer has to deal with. The irony is that Hickenlooper himself is probably the state's best marketing officer. He goes around this country and he gets great PR for Colorado. It looks like a lively, interesting place to live. Whether we actually need to have another department doing that is a better question.
Or something out there, you know, come to Colorado for the Thin Mint, stay for the Dozy Does, something like that. I don't know.